Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, November 30th, Monday, December 1st for those of you across the pond. Welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Hope you had a rockin' Thanksgiving week, a rocking beginning to your weekend, and I am your host, TessaTNT. We are live tonight on Spreaker, Periscope, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Tumblr, YouTube, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and Deezer. So tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we will be doing the We Are Paradox Media's Paradox Paranormal Forum. And the forum will be discussing many topics under the umbrella of the paranormal. What topics will we be talking about? Well, you got to listen in to find out. So tonight we are joined by Rick Kirkby from the UK. We have Jeffrey Seelman, SleepyDave Davenport, and Mia. So I'll just go in order of what I called you guys out on. Rick, can you tell us more about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
I'm Rick Kirkby in the northeast of the UK. Been researching and investigating paranormal things. Not always things that go bump in the night, but anything that sort of comes over that general description, UFOs, all the rest of it, cryptids and things like that, for some 20 plus years now. And I've always had an affinity for it since having some experiences from age 8.
That's very awesome. Jeffrey Seelman, can you tell our listeners more about yourself?
I am a professional exorcist and clearing expert. I've been doing this professionally for about 30 years now. I was born with psychic ability, and I'm also an author, and I've been on national and international television and radio many times, and have a great interest in helping people, and also a great interest in all things paranormal.
Mr. SleepyDave Davenport.
Hello, Tessa. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm just your average, everyday, I guess, guy, and I have had so many experiences with the paranormal, from living in haunted houses, seeing UFOs, and meeting, not only that, but meeting I had a friend of mine who had a very hefty run-in with some UFOs and aliens when he was in the military. So just basically been interested all my life, and the weirdness seems to creep around me no matter what. Sometimes it takes a hiatus, sometimes it doesn't.
Just all depends. And then we have the beautiful, lovely, and talented Miss Mia Savage. Mia, can you tell our listeners a bit more about yourself?
Yes, I am a so-called psychic, but I prefer now interdimensional traveler or messenger. I'm like, that fits perfectly. I have claircognizance, clairkinesis, which is like feeling things, and some other things. I think that I'm an extraterrestrial myself, but that's self-proclaimed. And yeah. That's it.
Mia?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to ask you a question since no one else is talking.
I'm sorry.
Why do you? What gave you your first impression as to your feelings about being from another planet? I think these things they do happen, and they're also very interesting.
Funny you should ask. I actually was just researching the whole native history with the star people or sky people in some different tribes. I do have Native in me. I'm not sure if that's where that comes from, but both me and my mother have some sort of crazy abilities. And now this whole starseed thing is coming out, but I truthfully believe our souls can actually be from different dimensions. I don't think necessarily it's within the 3D or even the 4D. Some of these planetary systems that people refer to in the starseed community, I think they're in different dimensions, and they might even still exist, but are not visible to the naked eye. I believe that I've just had these weird, strong knowings of things that are like languages, and I've gotten downloads that are not, there's no explanation. And some of the languages are like, I recognize them. Like I was watching this guy on YouTube. His name is, he goes by Standing Elk. And just speaking his language, which is not even the native that I'm related to, it's Zuni. And it was weird because like all of a sudden I knew exactly, I could speak his language all of a sudden. Like everything sounded so familiar to me. And that's just like an example. So just little things like that. I think a lot of us have souls that are from different dimensions. I don't think we're all just stuck here on Earth through each incarnation.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense. I certainly believe also that different people live different lifetimes on different planets, in different solar systems and galaxies, and that some of us can live in two places or three places at once. So I think
it's possible.
Yeah, and so what you're saying I think is very valid. That I think these things can happen, and certain people are very unique and are having very unique lives. I know SleepyDave mentioned having a lot of weird things happen, and some people have a lot of really strange metaphysical things happen to them in this life, and I don't think it's an accident, and I think it's for a reason.
It's interesting because one of the things that I started noticing at a young age is I did have a lot of ET encounters, or what they can call here. They call it sleep paralysis, but I would wake up and I would be surrounded by different types of extraterrestrials, and they each had a different feeling connected to them. And when I started really opening and gaining some abilities, I actually had, okay, if you've ever seen the movie Donnie Darko, this was before I had ever even seen that movie. That's why it freaked me out so bad. Like the little things, like the little tubes, like soul weird ties that they have, like coming out of their torso. I've seen that in humans. And one of which I worked with, and I know he was from sort of a reptilian type planet. And for some reason, I had this fear of anything from this reptile type planet, but I was surrounded by them at one time. I was very young, and I just remember being terrified of them because I think in another incarnation, they were the enemy. Now, since I've grown and expanded, I realize that we all should be coming together and uniting, and they can no longer hurt me. But I've actually seen someone transform into a reptile before my eyes in broad daylight before. And then he looked at me and he says, "I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else." So I think it's like the auras of people who have incarnated here attract different types of extraterrestrials, which may instill fear upon you, or you're naturally friends with them, right?
And I think a lot of them are here on certainly on missions of their own, different kinds of missions, and certainly are looking for people to help them, help ourselves, the human race, and people that can communicate with them. I've never been very convinced that they have so much to do with our government. I was in the military, the Air Force, many years ago, working in some specialized areas, and I just think that the aliens are here, and they are looking for groups, small groups, and people that can help them, help the human race.
I believe that as well. I think we have our own. I read somewhere that like just recently, I think since 1970 something, a whole bunch of incarnations that are Pleiadian are here specifically for the Earth, I don't know, that there's just a lot of belief to it. And I was studying it just today, like the native beliefs, even down to the number 1111. And I mean, they basically, we are repeating their ancient knowledge within our new age modern society. And so I was tripping out over all of these things that he was saying that are ancient, right? He's a chief from an ancient tribe, and he's repeating, or he's relaying in more detail the beliefs that we have now with these, these numbers and just different things. It was insane. But his name is it's Chief Standing Elk, and then his 13th dimensional name is Chief Golden Eagle, which is crazy. He has a 13th dimensional name, and he's like an older gentleman who has all this ancient knowledge passed down from his grandfather and his great grandfather. And it's just crazy how it's the same thing. That's the only reason why I believe, because starseeds can be a little far-fetched for most people. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, and some people might call it light bringer or so on and so forth, but there's all kinds of different things out there. So I had somebody on the show the other night talking about starseeds, and it's pretty interesting. And sorry about the awkward silence earlier. I was talking, but the mic was muted, so it didn't do any good.
I've done that several times, so no problem.
I think we all have.
Yeah.
I think there's so many people here too. I'm like afraid to talk because I don't want to be like crowding other people's conversation.
Right.
I guess the only thing that I would, add on to, what Mia was saying was that I have always felt, and I've had my own experiences with aliens, and I put that into my book, and that they seem to gel better with small groups and individuals, and I think they're getting more out of that than with militaristic organizations that simply want their technology for, and of course usually for nefarious purposes, bombs, as in weapons. But any alien worth us talking to would not sell any of our governments firecrackers, much less any kind of serious weapons, because we're liable to use them against each other, as we've done many times in the past.
Yeah, they very much seem to be quite interested when we developed nuclear capabilities, I believe.
That's a really good point, Rick, because studying, the different places where UFOs tend to appear, where people have reported seeing them, there's been a huge, lean towards areas where we're working on different radioactive technology, nuclear technology. You're so right. They're clearly watching that part of our existence.
Yeah, indeed. And if we're led to believe, they used to activate nuclear silos, and the MOD and whatnot was racing about. They couldn't stop it, do anything about it. And it was going sort of red alert for so many minutes, and then they deactivated it, probably as a show of power of saying, you think you're quite powerful, but you're dicing with death, and perhaps take a step back. I believe was probably the message that was trying to get across with that sort of thing. I think,
like you said, they're trying to give them like a reality check, like, how do you like this, and what do you think about nukes now? Yeah. And then it goes off. But you've also seen them attacking missiles in the sky and, making them blow up before they're supposed to, or putting them off course or whatnot. But there's so many amazing things out there.
And I think also, and I'll leave it to go after that and let you guys go with the conversation here, the next question. But I think also we tend to think that we're the only species on the planet and the most important, and that they're only here to save us. They might be here to save other species as well from being destroyed, by our pollution of the planet Earth, which has been going on for too long.
Exactly.
Supposedly, of some of the starseed incarnations, there's supposedly two main missions for the incarnated supposed extraterrestrials. Now, do I think that they're necessary extraterrestrials? Let's just call them like indigos. The two main missions are to raise awareness and to help protect, I call Material Island and Mother Earth, and from its destruction. So it's like two of these people that are being incarnated with those instincts to do so for others. I'm more on the elevating consciousness side, but I know plenty that's their life's mission, in the environment, change, peace, basically.
Yeah, we're certainly right there. If we don't turn this around now, there may be no turning back. So I think that the aliens, at least some of them, the good ones, have a great interest in seeing us survive, and also the rest of the life forms here on the planet Earth. We just have to get through this. We're kind of like going through our teenagers right now. We're obsessed with sex. We're obsessed with violence, just like your average teenager. And I'm not cutting down sex. I'm just saying that we're obsessed with
violence.
it. Or violence. It happens.
Sometimes.
How do I get out of this one?
The webs we weave.
Intergalactic travelers. But anyways, yeah. I think that I lost my train of thought here. But yeah, sex and violence is.
Sex and violence.
I sing about that. Intergalactic traveler, you threw me off there, so I'll let it go.
I also have ADD, so that's why I try to mute as much as possible. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Better just to plain forget what I was going to say than worry about it. I don't know.
I wonder if you was trying to say that we're too blinded by silly things, and like you said, we should all be coming together, be it interplanetary, dimensionally, to let the planet succeed, and given that, and I'm not sure if it's sort of moving on, but slightly staying on the same subject. Given that there's an atomic element, I believe they've discovered on Mars, which they believe there was it could only come from nuclear explosions. Was there a possible nuclear war there, and we were seeded to this planet, or some other sort of extraterrestrial was there, and they might be seeing something mirroring what might have happened there here, and that's why they're here to perhaps steer it away from that. And you know about this, Tessa.
Oh, I agree. There's so many things going on, and so many things that we think we know, but we don't. And it's hard when we have powers that may be that make decisions for us. Like, we're not all in on these certain decisions. They're just making their decisions on their own, and we all have to deal with the outcome. As far as Mars, it does make sense that this is some sort of weapon that created certain cracks, and there is radiation that has been picked up there. Who knows? Is that radiation from the sun or from exploding stars or other things like that? Or was there actually a civilization there that was destroyed by nuclear weapons, and now they're trying to teach us we don't need that? Even though it is a great power, we can use it for certain other things, but why use it against each other when it does, in the end, affect all of us? We all live on the Earth under this ozone layer that's keeping all these things inside. We're poisoning it ourselves, basically. But yeah, it'd be nice if they abolished all that stuff. But how do you get rid of it once you already have it? And there's so much on Earth that has been put together as weapons or power plants, so on and so forth. Where do you put it? There's no way to get rid of it besides to put it in containers and bury it.
Do it like in Superman 3, launch them all out into space.
I just feel like it'd come back.
Kidding.
He launched it.
They'd throw it
Far
right
like
back.
it would. Oh, it didn't quite hit out of the atmosphere. It's falling back.
And it's coming back. We're screwed.
Yeah, we do have enough weaponry to blow this planet over about 50 times.
Hopefully we just don't have anybody stupid enough in charge.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
I think the good news is that there's not a really good likelihood of another World War III. The Russians are making good money with Gazprom and selling to the Europeans and other energy systems that they're working with. Chinese, we know, are making a killing with their factory cities. Most of the stuff we buy from Walmart's, or a good portion of it, comes from China. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying that as long as we owe China money, they're not likely to attack us. Okay. Same with Russia. Russia's making a lot of money from Gazprom and other things. Not likely to attack anybody because we're now into commerce, which is really where we should be. The next step is we start to save this planet and start treating people like human beings, which is
exactly. Just going back to the Mars thing, if I may, for a minute, 'cause I just had to look it up. It's apparently a xenon-129 is an isotope that apparently can only be created from a nuclear explosion, or is evident in such mass concentrations as found on Mars. So that was just to put that in there.
Yeah. I've always suspected, like, it was a war, and that's how it happened. But then you wonder, well, was it something else? But that's very interesting. And it's only created from a nuclear explosion, you said, correct?
I believe that's the case, yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's all these theories about the star seeds and how everything came to be. One of them is very interesting. It talks about going back in time, how some races, even us as humans, some of these extraterrestrials are like us in the future, trying to come back in time and trying to stop like the destruction. That's just interesting. It's only a theory. I'm not saying I believe that, but that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I've seen something about that. I can't quite remember the university that did a study, but they sort of scaled up certain things about 1,000 or 2,000 years into the future, or some such thing as that, and the computer model predicted that we'd get the almond-shaped eyes and smaller mouths and various different things.
I remember that. I've seen that too.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
Almost androgynistic also. I remember this, and they're almost androgynistic because the less likely we were to breed basically in the future, because there was longer lifespans and it was, not needed.
Yeah.
We would be like aliens.
It'll make shopping a lot easier, that's for sure.
Well, there could be something to do with the time travel or interdimensional travel being possible humans from the future. If we're going down that vein, what could perhaps explain why we see radar blips or no radar blips? We see visually the people in the Air Force and whatnot, and then all of a sudden the craft's over there or over here. Are they folding time? Are they simply because we're seeing it in our realm of existence? Are they not actually moving that fast? They're
moving from different dimensions.
They're sort of they're like freezing time. We sort of blink and wait a minute, they're over there, but they must have travelled XYZ miles an hour. No, they might have only gone 50 miles an hour, but we was frozen momentarily, and then we.
So it's not necessarily dematerializing its time.
Possibly not. It could be some sort of time.
Rick, that makes perfect sense, because the aliens are showing up here without a 5 o'clock shadow. For those of you who don't know what that essentially is a 2-day-old beard on a guy.
We get those in other places.
Yeah, that's true.
Under our arms, on our legs.
I stand corrected, and so I think it's a good point, Rick. That they're clearly not coming here at 186,000 miles per second or whatever. That there's some way that they've found a shortcut. Sometimes when I've looked at these things on the inside, I kind of wonder if the technology is actually pervasive, meaning that it might be technology that you can buy, or that they're essentially gatekeepers. That who knows? Might be kind of like a toll booth or something, even.
Yeah.
This might be more. What I'm trying to get at is that this might be more common than we think. It may not be that every single alien race has its own propulsion system. They might be borrowing from each other, or a shortcut to get from point A to point B might be something that is either very well known throughout the galaxies, or something that maybe that certain alien races actually watch over and maybe charge a small fee for it, or whatever. You never know.
Yeah, like the Einstein-Rosen-bridge theory, or wormholes to people who are not together with that. I'm sure we know what wormholes are from science fiction and whatnot, but Einstein definitely put up that theory. So who knows? There may well be someone sat there taking in 3,000 zip-zop blips per travel, or whatever the toll may be, or whatever currency is. So yeah, it could be anything like that.
Like up near Lake Titicaca and so on and so forth, at these certain lakes, there were UFOs sighted, and they not only came out of the water, but they sucked up so much water in this one particular lake that it took the lake down 8 inches. Are they turning the water into power? Which people have... I have a friend just down the road who was powering his car on water for a while. I mean, you can use it for welding, so many different things. Are they perhaps using the water for energy, or is it to sustain certain animals that they've taken for whatever uses they may need? I think it's for power uses, but it's pretty interesting that that was done and people actually witnessed it.
You can buy cars from from model shops that use aqua cells. You just put water in and you shake them, I believe, and just put them in. I've seen them on various different things, and they use water cells. So I'm sure a more advanced race, or even if it's us from the future, have gained this technology given the amount of water on the planet. And also, given that we know supposedly more about Mars and the moon and whatnot than we do most oceans and what's in them and how deep they go, perhaps some other sightings and certain things, perhaps they don't travel interstellar or anything like that. Perhaps they come from the deepest, darkest places on our own planet, under the ocean. I mean, it's so vast compared to the land masses that we would probably have no way of ever tracking them, given that we've got stealth technology and we can get under the radar, I'm sure. They can, and knowing that when we get blips on radar, I'm sure it's by their design, just to show us that they're there. So perhaps, like me and Jeff touched on earlier, they're maybe not travelling great distances. They perhaps are already here, under the oceans, under the earth. And, so we see sights and disappears below the horizon, or false time, or maybe they have got terrific propulsion, or perhaps they just submerged back in the ocean and they've disappeared, where they're gone. But it's very, very interesting.
I'm thoroughly convinced that octopi, do I call it? Is that the plural? So. Octopus is actually an alien. I mean, if you think about it, they can change color, they can change form, and they're extremely intelligent. They're actually, they're so intelligent, like it's insane. And I also have heard that there are, in the center of the earth, I did read this, it was probably someone like David Icke or someone like that said this, so take it with a grain of salt, but I have heard that there's a species that is in Earth's core as well, or under the ground, as you said, some sort of race that resides there.
Yeah, that would not surprise me one bit.
This segment should be called Aliens on Earth.
Are you one? I know. I got so mad at my little brother because he said that my daughter looked like an alien because her eyes were so big and her fingers were long and lanky, and she is my first kid, and I'm just like, hey, that's mean, but she did really look like a little alien baby.
I think one thing we can think about in a positive level is that just like in the movie Independence Day, which everybody in this world has seen, the first one at least, that there are no large 15-mile in diameter spaceships hovering over our major cities and threatening us. So they're evidently here for some other reason. And they're not.
True. If millions of people are experiencing them and yet, they haven't taken over Earth yet,
right.
Chances are they're not going to anytime soon.
No, I don't think so either. I think that I think if you look at it from a devil's advocate position, if you were going to take out a planet and take over the planet, the last thing you would do is you would want people to scatter. So what you would do is introduce a biological agent into the atmosphere that would kill the life forms that you want to kill, leave the ones you want alive, and then come down and clean up the mess. Everybody's gone. And so if they're going to do that, that would probably be the way that they would do that. That's the way I think that we would do that, even at our level of understanding. But I think, I agree with Mia. I just think that they're not here to destroy us yet. I mean, there's no evidence of that. I think more likely, I think there's rogue aliens out there that are negative, but I think generally we might even be being protected to a certain extent from negative aliens by aliens that care.
Well, I believe that's true. You have not only heard of these things happening in our skies above us, but there's actual artwork of war in our atmosphere against different spacecraft. Perhaps that was, the good against the bad, and, the good one, or vice versa, and so we're protected by that. And I think a lot of times these other alternate ones do come in because there are so many different ones going on, but I think we're definitely being protected by an alien race, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean,
whether they're here or
people
on the
ask
outskirts.
Me all the time and other people, where are they then? There's so many of them around and all the rest of it. But when I say to them, would you step out of your spacecraft in Central Park or Trafalgar Square? Why did I say that wrong? I know how to say that, Rick. Or by Buckingham Palace or Red Square. Why would you do that when people have been known to take shots at politicians and anything that's different? They have families as well as we do, and they want to go home, whether it be underneath the Earth or in another galaxy. They don't want to get shot at. Nobody likes to get shot at, and right now we're going through that violent phase, and I think one of the reasons that they don't show themselves publicly is because they're afraid of us on a physical level. Maybe not in the side of one of their spacecraft, but the idea of coming out and saying hello and shaking our hands or whatever, however the meeting would go. The idea is that we have a tendency to say, what kind of shirts do you wear? What religion do you believe in? Oh, you don't believe in Jesus? Bang. This happens every day anyway to humans. They're probably not going to look like us. We're not getting along with people who belong to different religions, who have different skin colors. How could we possibly get along with beings that may have more than two arms or two eyes, or just look different and think differently? More likely to resent them. I'm speaking generally, of course.
Yeah, given all the TV programming that we put out there on all different genres, I'm sure that they're probably most likely watching it up there.
Well,
we make them look stoic.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, I just was going to say that our Hollywood, which I watch movies, I love movies, but we make aliens look stoic, meaning that they don't have any emotions. They always have these big plots and plans. They're always negative or usually negative, and they don't seem to have any emotions. And it's like, well, why would that be? Why would aliens not have emotions like human beings? Why would they not have families and and love their families and be lonely and have senses of humor. We all think that they have these incredible missions, like I said, and they're completely serious. And I think it just kind of, breeds a stereotypical concept of an alien.
I think they exist also on a different dimension that's not visible to the human eye. I've had a few different encounters, and every single one of them every single one of them I was in bed. I saw them physically manifest in front of me in my room, but I think I was halfway to like astraling. And a couple of times I did astral, and I literally ran down the stairs, and there was one standing in front of my back door, and those were the little ones. But I don't think those ones were there to harm me. But what I'm saying is, like, when you astral, you can astral into different planes. So I think that they might be here, but on a different plane where we can't see them also is a possibility.
Makes sense.
Yeah, very much like when you tune a radio in. If you tune into one radio station, you hear the music or the person speaking, but it doesn't mean that on 99.9 or whatever you was on before that stopped broadcasting. So it could very well be something like that, like you say, interdimensionally or interplanetary or whatever, beaming and focusing in certain places. So then they can either materialize or decide to stay hidden, just because we're running on, say, 105 FM, they may be running on 99.9 FM, but we can't see them because we're running on a different frequency. And it could be just something as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Rick, and also that they would have control. They would have control of the dial, meaning that they could change the frequency from 95.7 to 94.7 if necessary. As we are not able to do that, that they may be able to switch frequencies at will. And I think that's what Mia was kind of, if I was getting her correctly, that, that they could be interdimensional. And we just can't see them. They are around us, and they're seen when they want to be seen. The last thing I'll say on this, I'll let you guys go here and continue with this, but I don't want to talk too much, but I live right around the Great Lakes. I live 2 blocks from Lake Michigan. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've lived in Las Vegas many times. I was in the Air Force. But there's an awful lot of a disproportionate amount of sightings of UFOs around the Great Lakes areas. It's just the way it is. It's the way it always has been. I think it does speak to the idea that they might have some underground or underwater bases in some of the deep waters here, in Atlantic Ocean, the pond, and lots of places. That's where I would certainly have a base if I was
hydro power again, hidden bases.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that kind of came to me, I just had to say this because it was so interesting what you guys were talking about, because I think Mia had said this, intergalactic traveler, that the idea of taking from Lake Titicaca in New York, that I think it's New York, that the water level, I was wondering, it's possible maybe with their propulsion systems that they can extract whatever they need from any kind of liquid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That say it wasn't water, but it was methane, that they could take that methane and extract what they need for their propulsion systems. So the idea is that they take 8 inches of water from a large lake, and maybe they could use, out of every 1,000 gallons, they could use half a gallon of that for pure propulsion, meaning that they could use maybe just about anything and extract anything for propulsion. Just something that kind of popped in my head when you said that. Because I didn't hear that before, Mia. I didn't know that. And so I was just thinking, that I was wondering if they can't get water, maybe if they're on a different planet or a different moon or whatever, that maybe they can extract what they need from just about anything.
Yeah, and that was me, Tessa, that was talking about that. And
I'm sorry, Tessa.
No worry. And another thing that I heard about water is the dirtier it is, the more conductive it is for energy. So that's interesting as well. A lot of places that are near dirty rivers like the Mississippi, so on and so forth, have a lot of paranormal activity that could be powered by this dirty river just running by it. You don't even have to have a power plant for it. But just imagine what aliens can do with their knowledge with this water that is soiled. And man, there's so much chemistry and so on and so forth to think about as far as that goes.
That's why ladies like expensive mud baths.
Right? It's good for you. I guess. I don't know. I haven't had one.
I went to a hot springs in Italy, and this friggin' they are known for their mud, and my skin looked so good. And we probably looked like weirdos because we were all the group I was with just rubbing this mud from the bottom of the spring all over our face. We looked like aliens. But I'm telling you, the minerals from this water from the mud were so nice on your skin. It was amazing. I know that was totally off topic, but I was going to say, as far as the water goes, what if, because like I said about octopuses, I don't know.
Octopi?
What if they took some of our water and some of our water with some sort of microorganism of theirs went back in somehow to our ocean, and that's where the octopus came from. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, anything is possible here. There's certainly so many different interesting creatures underneath the water. And like I said, I think it's very possible that aliens brought us here. It's we're certainly very different than any other creature on the planet. I don't think we're worth more, but what creature on the planet Earth builds skyscrapers, airplanes, cars, and spaceships?
Doesn't make sense.
So there's something weird about the human race. We are definitely different. I'm not saying we're worth more. I'm not saying we're better, but we are different.
And definitely very weird.
Yes, we are.
That comes back to just the ancient tribes. I mean, not just one tribe, like multiple tribes from different places. The Lakotas, what is it? The Xenu, or what are they called?
Zuni?
I'm sorry, not Xenu. Zuni, there we go. Those ones. Okay, so like the Lakotas, like they speak of mysterious beings coming down from the sky and abducting their children. Now they're talking about abductions, but some of the other ones, like the Zuni, they believe in actual star people, and that their souls were actually come from the sky or from another star system, or a star for that matter, come down to Earth as spirits or souls, and then where they went into the human body. So what if it's not even just a genetic thing? What if our souls are actually from somewhere else, and we just carry some of the past knowledge that we had? Maybe our planet exploded. Who knows? Also a thought.
There was an article in the news, the legitimate news, just a few weeks ago, that scientists now believe that Venus, the planet Venus, used to be a lot cooler than it is now, a lot cooler, maybe cool enough to support life, which was kind of a shocker to me because it's pretty hot. And so we were talking about Mars earlier, and how some things may have gone wrong and we might have migrated, which I think is very possible. But it's also possible, scientists think, that we might, that at one time Venus might have had life. And it's would not be surprising to me as a psychic, all the weird things that have happened to me. And I know SleepyDave has talked about that at the show, that certainly things have happened to me that we might have been either brought here or somehow seeded. It would not be surprising to me, considering how, well, as Tess said, how weird we are. So, it's true. That.
Well, they've not found the missing link, have they? So from someone.
Not yet, but I'm sure. It's probably one of us. But I think that. It's a good point. And but I look at it like this, no matter how intelligent whales and dolphins are and all these wonderful creatures, they're not building spaceships. Why are we
Boom.
building spaceships to get to where to why are we making recordings of Mozart and kindergarten classes and all of this thing and sending this out saying here we are? Why are we even doing this? There's something, I think we need to look at ourselves. I'm not really putting this question out so much to the group as I am to the listeners, that, to think, why do we do the things that we do? Just something to think about.
Mm-hmm. One of the quotes, wow, my ear just started ringing big time, so you must be on to something. One of the quotes from the chief, standing out, the chief, was that we are moving into a new realm of understanding that will be knowing, not thinking, but knowing. Right. And that's just the depth of some of the knowledge that I read. It's just like, I feel like we are moving as a collective into just such a higher place spiritually for a reason, whether you believe in star seeds, whatever you believe in, the fact that, people believe in chakras and are starting to understand that. His view on that is that each chakra is tuned to a different color, and that it actually is like it's like a doorway to the beginning of another dimension, right? And this is like ancient knowledge passed down for generations. Like, they believed that a long time ago, and we still continue to believe and experience that, but we're all becoming aware of it. It's like all of this things that were forgotten are now coming to the surface, probably for a reason, for us to kind of expand and learn and grow. And eventually, what if we gain the knowledge and the advancement to be able to communicate on that different dimension where the other species are, and we have like this whole like different galaxy collective of like politicians from different planets and stuff? Like, what if that is possible? That's a theory again, but I mean, I think we're growing for a reason.
I would agree.
Yeah, and it seems like we're growing in some ways, but a lot of ways we're digressing. So it's kind of a scary time in our world as well. A lot of us are seeing and realizing things and moving forward, and a lot of us are digressing and moving backwards.
Sink or swim. Sink or swim.
But I also heard
Can I interject real quick about something?
Yeah. Go on.
Because Ron was making a point in the chat room about, he said every 10th, when he was a kid, every 10th news clip wasn't about, people dying or animals dying of plastic. And it is true on the outset. This green thing, this whole Save the Planet thing really does piss me off in a way, because I think at the outset, the real rulers of this planet, they're people who are really in charge. I'm talking about the guys on State Street, the Rothschilds, all the famous inventors. If these people were really interested in saving the planet and going green, then I really think that they would be using and utilizing Tesla technology. I mean, the guy invented electric cars over like 100 years ago, and J.P. Morgan shuts him down because he can't charge people for installing antennas. I mean, there are ways to do it, and the ways have been suppressed over the years. Technology has been bought, I'm sure. I mean, Mae Brussel, just to mention her real quick, talked about in the early 70s from, I think, it was either a National Geographic article or one. She read it from an article, one of these science articles, that they were doing some scientific expeditions down in Antarctica, and they were filtering and purifying the seawater down there, so they had fresh water. So where's this technology now? Why aren't they doing it now?
They don't want you to have it.
Things like that.
Okay, so Indonesia, they have these bags. In Indonesia, they have these bags that look and act just like plastic bags, right? I think it's Indonesia, but they're literally, they will melt. They will just melt and decompose like sugar. They're not made out of sugar. They're made out of some type of a root. But I mean, it wouldn't be expensive for us to make those. If Indonesia or one of those countries is doing this, why aren't we all doing this? It looks like a plastic bag. If you look at it, durable, looks just like one. I don't think you can get it wet because it's dissolvable, but still, I mean, That's genius. Why the heck are we not jumping on?
Well, they're also making plates and what we call silverware, all kinds of things with this biodegradable stuff made of leaves, so on and so forth.
We have potato starch bags and things here as well.
Well, I think some people care and some people don't. I really believe the answer to all of this is a lot simpler than, and also a lot scarier than we might believe. I think some of this comes down to simple self-destructive behavior. And also, I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here, and I'm going to say what I've always believed, that most of the religions, most of the major religions on this planet are completely self-destructive and destructive at the same time. And there's such a thing as self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning that a lot of the religions believe that we're in the end times, and they just can't make it happen fast enough. And so what I'm kind of aiming this a little bit in a nice way at SleepyDave. The reason I'm saying this is you're kind of wondering, why they don't fix this. Maybe they don't want to.
That's an interesting theory as well.
Yeah, that's the kicker. They don't want to.
Yeah.
Just like I've heard the theory.
Well, we know who will be safe in the end times. There's a select group that will be safe. That will be.
Ron told me I was wrong about something. What am I wrong about?
I don't know.
To build your own has been around for 100 years. Yeah, I know, to build my own. Okay, yeah, well, I don't have the time. And you know damn well, Ron, that most people in today's day and age don't have the time to go build their own windmills and their own solar panel, their own stuff to be self-sufficient. You know that. Because
the man's keeping us down. We got to work 3 jobs to survive.
Well, people,
yeah.
It's true. I hate
but
it.
Let's look at history, though.
It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm serious.
Yeah, I wasn't saying you were. I'm just saying. People come to me and I don't know. You're right. Inflation.
I feel like.
Well, all I want to say is this: the first cars were steam cars. The second cars were battery powered. That's history. Okay.
Yeah.
First cars were steam. The second cars we designed on this planet were run on batteries. The third cars that we made were run by fossil fuels. So we had the answer. Now, they had problems with the batteries and how to dispose of them and things like that. That is true. What I'm saying is they already had the technology. So there's some reason or reasons to at least take a look at the idea that the powers that be in this planet are suicidal and they need to be stopped. And I'm not advocating violence. But what I'm saying is that if we need to think we can sit around and wait for them to save us, to save themselves, we're fooling ourselves, because there's too many religions on this planet and philosophies believe in the end times and they're looking forward to it. They're being lazy. Right. How do we explain to our children why they should go to school when, the end times are here? If my parents put that on me, I'd say, I'm not going to school. Why should I? But my parents didn't do that to me. But and I don't mean to get off topic here, but I'm just trying to say that if you're wondering why we're not saving the planet, it's because the people who are in charge of the planet do not give a you-know-what.
Right.
They don't care if they die. They don't care if they die, we die, or the whole world dies. As a matter of fact, they're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a consumeristic society, though. Think about that.
Well, yeah, there are those out there who love to go out and create havoc to bring it all about.
Right. Sure. But, the few are the rich who want to stay rich, so it's all about the almighty dollar, and they don't care about the rest of it. As long as they have their money, they're fine. But there's more of us out there that are looking at the big picture, and you can't breathe money, you can't drink money, so on and so forth. So it's not really worth it, but we don't have the say. It's the select few that do. Hopefully someday that'll change. I don't know.
The greedy extraterrestrials.
It's got to. It's got to, because we're not making it. And I think the human race, we need to be around for thousands of years and spread out into different solar systems and galaxies not taking over planets, but, maybe terraforming or whatever, dead planets, that kind of thing. I'm not for taking over planets, but I just don't believe in nihilism. I just, most of my clients are religious people. I'm sort of a spiritual person, but I'm more of a scientific guy. And I just, after 30 years of doing this stuff, it's one thing I've learned is that too many of our belief systems on this planet involve self-destruction.
Off topic.
As a philosophy, as a positive philosophy, self-destruction as a positive philosophy.
Well, on that note, you guys...
Let's get ourselves to heaven.
Right? We do have to go to our first musical break. On this break, we have Tracy Cruz, who is from the Bay Area of California, with, on this break, Emotional Love, Flowers, and Candy. Candy sounds good. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
To do, my heart is so confused. In the past it's been put down, it's been shattered, and then I'm left without any clue to know the real truth about what I found. But with you I found my common ground. Your love makes me emotional, 'cause you're the one that makes me feel emotional. You make me feel that love is real. Since I was young, my mom said, makes you strong you, my life changed. Your love rained all over me. It was blissful, so special, essential. Life poetry, true beauty. We created, we made it. Reality, pure affection with expression. A connection was meant to be. You make me feel so good inside, like therapy for my mind. You make me feel so good inside. It was like flowers and candy, understanding how you're standing really must be love. I'm talking true, I'm talking real, and I felt it in my heart. It was like flowers and candy, understanding how you're standing really must be love. I'm talking true, I'm talking real, and I felt it in my heart and soul. You make me feel so good inside. You make me feel so good inside.
Now what is this that's happening? I don't even know you anymore. Oh, yeah, changes moving through everything. Yeah, and I don't even know what we're fighting for.
Our bright days turn to sleepless nights. Our loving ways have turned to endless fights, and we can't seem to compromise. We try so hard to make things right. Yesterday, we'll erase
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight, we have a gathering that we like to call the Paradox Paranormal Forum. Tonight, we are joined by Rick Kirkby, Jeffrey Seelman, SleepyDave Davenport, and Miss Mia Savage. Welcome back, guys, and thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for this hour, since Jeffrey actually asked the first question last hour, we're going to go to Mr. SleepyDave Davenport. SleepyDave, what topic of discussion would you like to discuss?
Hold on a second. You asked me a question right at the same time Melody asked me a question.
Uh-oh.
And this will be interesting. We can. How about this? This will be interesting. How about and because I didn't have anything really. I'm like, but thank goodness for kids through the mouths of babes. She's looking at a picture of herself when she was a baby, and you know how you can get those pictures made and then your name, and then it tells you the meaning of your name. So that's what she's reading, and she's reading it. And she says, wait a minute, how do they know all these things are true about me, about my name? So what's in a name? I know, I've read it. She wants to read it now. She's so excited.
Oh, shoot.
I'm listening. Well, come and read.
Everyone in the world, what I'm doing.
Well, I'm on the air, Melody. Here.
Oh, no, did we lose him?
No, I just had to mute it to tell her to pipe down and not be so angry about me on the air.
Maybe she's just very passionate.
No, she's angry that everybody could hear her.
Aw. Well, she doesn't have to share if she doesn't want to.
She says, how do you think I feel about people hearing me get upset around the world? Oh, bless her heart.
We love you and we feel your anger, your pain, your strife.
No, she just wanted to read it. But I don't know. I don't know. But names used to mean a lot more than, I guess, what they do now. But I don't really have anything. I'm just listening to you guys. And I've had such a rough week in the real world, actually a couple of weeks. And the paranormal things in my life have actually simmered down since I've moved out west. It's rather odd. So when I hear of other people who live in the valley who have radio programs or Mia, for example, I just don't run into those types of people out here. More back east I did for whatever reason and stuff. So I'm just getting distracted because I asked her to turn down the TV a bit and I got yelled at.
Oh, no worries.
Oh my gosh. I just read my name on that dictionary. I just have to show this because it's crazy. Nobody spells it like me, by the way. Like, I've never even heard of it. But it says a very clumsy, awkward person.
What?
Always has a smile and is cheering people up. She's always there when you need her. I just think that's funny. Very clumsy and awkward person. How do they know no one has my name? That's a lot. Sorry, I'm done. It's just hilarious.
They were following you around and then they wrote it down.
I'm trying to get Melody to come over here and
Caught me at the bar.
Read her name on the air, what her meaning of it.
Future President Mel. Future Madam President Mel. Can you read it to us, please? We're so curious.
Come on, don't be shy. Read it what it says. We don't have much time. All right, well, I guess she's not going to do it. So
almost.
Right? Well, in that case, I have a topic that I was thinking of, and somebody sent me a video, and it was called A Story of the Lost Boys, like the movie The Lost Boys, and they were talking about their experience in California, where they had all gotten together for a dinner date, and they came out, and there were this little gang of boys, preteen and perhaps teen-aged boys, and as they were walking to their car, one of them called one of them out by name, and they ignored these kids, got in the car, and then went to their next destination. And as they got out of the movie, they were standing outside of that place as well. And then as they got home, they were there at their house. Like, how did they know where they were going? How did they get there so quickly? So on and so forth. And it made me wonder, are all of these stories about black-eyed kids and black-eyed people, could they really actually be vampires? And, not saying that vampires are real, like, it just kind of makes you wonder, what exactly are they? You hear all these different stories, and it's really mind-blowing, and they're always looking to get in your house to use your phone or use the restroom, and in the end, one of their last requests is, can they eat, because they're really hungry? But you never let them in because you'll be their meal. What do you guys think that black-eyed kids or black-eyed people are? And we'll start with Jeffrey.
I've always believed that there are shape changers, not only on the non-physical side of reality, what some people call heaven, the other side, Summerland, spiritualists call it. I also think that there could be shape changers on a physical level, Tessa, and I think that they just simply might be hostile creatures because that are able to appear as they want to appear. We know, at least the philosophy goes, that this can be accomplished on a non-physical level, meaning that with the power of visualization, which is very powerful on a non-physical level, that we can change the way that people see us, meaning that when her 80-year-old grandmother dies, that when we do see her, she has changed her shape through her will to look the way she wants. I think that there are creatures out there that can do this on a physical level, and I think there are a number of different kinds of beings just here on the planet Earth that probably are trying very hard to blend in with human beings, and but are really here for their own purposes and are not necessarily our friends. I think most of them are, and some of them are not. It stands to reason only because, as we know, most people are good and some are not. I've always believed that most spirits are good and some are not. And it stands to reason then, of course, then that other beings from either other dimensions or other planets or both, most would be good and some would have, bad intentions toward us. Where are they from? I don't know. I think that when it comes to negative spirits, negative people, and say these particular kinds of beings, all these kinds of mentalities tend to be pathological liars. Okay, let me say that right, pathological liars. And so what I'm saying is, I'm not sure we'd get a straight answer from them. You probably would not want us to know where they're from. And so, but I would like to know, and I think it's very possible that these things are happening. Lots of reports of and even video of some very suspicious looking people. Lots of reports of visitations to people's homes by people who just don't seem right, and by highly intelligent, articulate, and perceptive people that say, look, these people were at my house and there was just something wrong with them. They weren't human. I think they're around. Where are they from? I don't know. But anybody who would eat us without salting us and cooking us properly, I would consider to be very negative.
Right.
I guess I was thinking about the old movie Soylent Green, which I saw when I was a kid back at the movie theater, which so many people seem to have forgotten. that when we die,
remember
they
that
actually
movie.
make crackers out of us. The hospitals put everybody in the garbage can, and from the morgue picks it up in the middle of the night. They bring us and they make crackers out of us, which, strangely enough, made me hungry at the movie theater.
Right? Did it make you feel guilty? You're like, oh man, why did that just make me
No.
hungry?
No, it's really scary. Once in a while on Facebook, I post this little cartoon that's a little box of, of human crackers, the Soylent Green. And I just, whenever my psychiatrist has asked me, essentially, that's kind of weird, Jeffrey. It's like, well, hey, just make sure that I'm lightly salted and that I taste good. That's all I care about. And I want my picture on the box. That's all I ask. How did I get to this? But
A box of salted Jeffries.
box of salted Jeffries, lightly salted, several different flavors, also for a decent price, available on Amazon.com. But
Make your orders now because
absolutely,
supplies will not last.
that is so true. I'm going to go fast. And, then there's a little
Flamin'
bit
hot,
of,
crunchy Jeffries. There you go.
absolutely, it's true. And, there is some evidence out there. If you look on the store shelves, there are boxes of food with people's pictures on them. Okay,
Mr. Newman?
So it's not just me. We have to look a little deeper at these things.
Yes, Toucan Sam has been on the box for years. No.
And also some of the
Walnut
sports
sauce.
figures.
You're right.
they're
Bruce
on the-
Jenner on the box of Wheaties. You eat Wheaties, you turn
where's
into
Bruce
a
at the moment?
woman.
We don't know exactly. But the idea is that, that
They
on
probably
the
have
box.
soy and mess with your estrogen levels.
Yeah. He seems like a very nice person, but I guess getting back to the subject, I
One
don't
of the
mean
listeners said sauteed Jeffrey.
sauteed Jeffrey sounds pretty good, but I just a little bit of minced garlic in there. But yes, I wouldn't mind being a cracker.
Teriyaki Jeffrey.
Actually, that sounds pretty good. Now I'm getting hungry again, but
Jeffrey?
I don't want to eat myself, But like I said, I can imagine sitting there at the kitchen table, eating a bowl of Jeffrey flakes, looking at a picture of me on the box. Have you seen this psychic? Or something like that. I don't know. But,
Has been missing since.
But yes, Tessa, to be serious here, that I do think that there are an awful lot of strange things happening on this planet.
And for me, fact is indeed stranger than fiction. And I believe anything's possible.
Well said.
Oh, you know what's stranger than fiction? Now that Miss Madam's calmed down, she wants to read her thing on the air.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, come over here and bring it, Melody, please. Get your little picture. She's got a picture, her baby picture is like 3 days old. And then my stepmom got her this picture made that says what her name means. Go ahead and read it. You can watch yourself. Go ahead.
The meaning of my name is
You gotta talk a little louder.
song. And then what's that say?
Where? Emotional spectrum.
Life
So
is
this-
sad. Life is so much fun.
And then it says personal integrity. It says her reputation is beyond reproach. And then say, what's the next?
Personality,
Personality. A good sport in athletics and everything else.
relationships. Probably gives more in a relationship than she receives.
Travel and leisure. Unplanned.
Unplanned trips can be the most fun according to Melody.
And then career and money.
Career and money. Melody knows how to balance and career family.
Life's opportunities.
Not one to pass up a chance for achievements. She will go far.
For advancement. But good job. There you go.
Good job.
Good job.
All right.
Definitely the future president.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great job.
Good job.
Nice one.
I like the vacation one because I'm like a fly by the seat of my pants type of gal, and the only one I've really planned was the one out to Arkansas, and then we planned the one to California for the kids, to Disneyland and such. But otherwise, I just go on a whim, like, all right, I'm leaving in a day or two. Like, is that okay with you? And then I'll go.
What was Mayo again? 2 left feet.
2 left feet. Well, did anybody else
Maybe.
have any thoughts on what black-eyed kids and black-eyed people may be?
Oh, I seen somebody's eyes turn black.
What
One
happened?
It was demonic possession. That was that was somebody close to me that I knew, and we were in the kitchen of her place, and she started talking kind of in the third person. We know all about you. We know your secrets. We this. And I said, who's we? And her face started to contort. And it looked like it actually got, like, her jawline actually looked like it actually got longer. It was very strange to see. I mean, this is why I talk about when people messing with, chasing ghosts and demonic entities. And, just when you see somebody, her eyes were originally, her normal eye color is crystal clear blue. And they went from crystal clear blue to shot out black. I mean, just boom. And it was like, wow. And by this time, she was talking pretty much in a male voice to me and screaming obscenities and other threats and things. And so that was back, I think, in 2014. And that was probably one of the most scariest experiences, because in that house I lived in, the old entity or the spirits that responsible for sleep paralysis was there. I woke up. I experienced that probably 5 out of 7 nights a week. One night I woke up. It was about 11:30 at night, and I felt like I was sleeping on my side, and it felt like my head was being pinned down and held down. And my whole body, and I could only move my eyes. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't even scream. And it took me tried to jerk my body a few times, and it took me a few times to jerk out of it or be released, so to speak. I don't know. But as soon as I quit associating with this person, all that activity ceased, and I haven't had sleep paralysis in over 2 years. So you have to wonder what lingers around people, not just places.
Indeed. Mia, what are your thoughts?
I am really fascinated with the thought of your vampire theory, because, you've seen those pictures of, like, even celebrities like Keanu Reeves and things like that, and they are identical. I'm not saying that those are real. I'm saying, though, that the possibility of vampires I think it's a real possibility. I've never seen one on the astral. My closest experience with a vampire was there was it was a person, but again with the sleep paralysis, connected to a person that I was just talking about, and he always reminded me of a vampire, which is very interesting. I mean, he didn't dress like one or anything, he just reminded me of one. And then obviously I was told by my friend who actually dated him that he was an energy vampire. And sure enough, at her house, I felt his presence and got into that sleep paralysis, only it was sucking away my energy. And so I'm curious, though, if, like, actual vampires or, like, eternal beings can incarnate as people, or perhaps there was just a spirit or a few spirits that got together, and if it was a possession of these kids, I don't know if it's like, if there can be eternal beings, or if it was some type of a possession of some kind, or even just a different someone from a different dimension that came in and did that, of, like, I don't know, lower vibrational dimension. But it would be interesting if there were actual vampires. I know with the movie Lost Boys, they changed the name of the city, but it was based on a real city in California. It was in a real city in California that really did have the highest death rate. That wasn't a lie. That city has the highest, abduction / murder rate in the country at one time, at that time. That's why they had to change the name. Not Santa Monica. Maybe it was Santa Monica. I don't know where it was filmed, but they changed it to what? I think it was Santa Clarita or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting this confused.
I think it was Santa Monica.
But they called it Santa Clarita in the movie. I think that's what it was. And they had like a really high murder disappearance rate. So it would be interesting if there was some truth to the actual story, would be even more interesting,
Well, yeah, and this story that I heard was a real story of somebody who had that experience. And, these kids ended up at his house banging on the door, let us in. I need to use your bathroom. I need to use your phone. I'm hungry.
Well, they can't come in unless you invite them. So
that's right. So they're trying to use everything possible to make you feel bad for them, to be like, okay, just for a second or whatever. Don't fall for it. Don't let
Vampires.
them in. And when I said vampires, we all have that version in our heads of the blood-sucking vampire, but the only vampires that I have ever witnessed are, like you said, Mia, and I believe...
psychic vampires.
Yeah, they're energy vampires. They drain your energy. And there's so many different ways that they do it. And it's funny to me, you also mentioned sleep paralysis. And they're saying, well, this is a health issue and so on and so forth. How come I've only had it twice? How come people experience it, a few times or more?
Only around
then
one
it stops.
person or in one location.
Yeah. Very intriguing. All right, well, that was the end of my question, so we'll go next to Miss Mia Savage. Mia, did you have a topic or question for the forum?
I was gonna just I kind of already touched on it. I just want to have I have a recommendation. I wrote it down, the YouTube channel here for the guy. Anybody who's interested in learning about ancient knowledge from supposedly the stars through this chief, trying to find the name of the actual, I wrote it down somewhere. He is if you just look up, hold on one second here, Standing Elk, it's his name, Chief Standing Elk. The channel though is, I think if you just Google Chief Standing Elk and you look at the videos, he's on YouTube and has a ton of them, and he just passes down all this ancient knowledge from the tribe that was supposedly given to them by the star people. It's very fascinating because it's in line with a lot of the current beliefs of what a lot of people believe in about chakras and the number 1111, how 1111 is like a divine masculine god and a divine feminine goddess and just all this crazy stuff. But let's go on vampires though, because I pretty much already covered that. What are your guys' view on vampires being in existence, period?
I don't think they exist in the form that they're portrayed in the movies. As suck somebody's blood and then they live forever. I think there's vampires in the sense that there are people out there who drink people's blood because they think it gives them some sort of, energy or whatever ritualistic reason that they do it.
But what if it does?
Then that's pretty. Thank you. I don't mess with that. That's in the realm of things not to do. Because then you're, in my opinion, you're flirting with the dark side. I mean, what would possess you to drink somebody's blood? I mean, come on.
That doesn't mean they don't exist, though.
Right, I'm just saying. But I'm sure it's a conduit because people use blood rituals, sacrifices, so it does exist. There you go. Whether somebody wants to say that's the proof or not, that's up to them, I suppose.
I agree with you, SleepyDave. I think that for the most part, that they don't exist in the Hollywood form or style. But we do know that there are, many creatures on this planet that drink blood in order to survive. And so it would stand to reason it could be that there would be higher life forms that may exist off of essential life fluids, other than water, or that is a way that maybe that they get water. I talked about before about extraction, about getting certain chemicals. So I think it's possible. One thing I have just found, in 3 decades of working professionally, is that I think just anything is possible. I might, I don't have any evidence of vampires being real, but I think that it's possible. Certainly, humans, we drink blood. I was over in Europe many times before I found out what black and white pudding was. I had it again and again for breakfast, and I finally asked the waiter. I was in an English. Ricky, listening? I was at an English restaurant, and then I finally found out essentially it was blood when I was eating. And so I think that scientifically, physiologically, I think it's possible. I don't think that we have a lot of evidence, but I also think that there are these kinds of beings and creatures would probably go way out of their way, like negative spirits do, to hide, and are very comfortable living under the concept that, hey, that's just unbelievable. It's better if you think that that's fantasy, and that is a great way to disguise.
Yeah, and there's so many weird things about that. Like, my husband and I were talking the other night about, in France, there's certain cheeses, and you have to be careful about ordering inhabited or uninhabited cheese. Unless you want to be eating maggots in your cheese, order uninhabited, or different worms or different things that may be living in the cheese. It's pretty, for me, disgusting, but I guess they do it for the protein value.
I'm writing that down right now as we speak.
Yes, make sure.
France, don't order the filled cheese with maggots.
Cheese.
Yeah,
No
don't.
inhabited cheese.
I believe it actually creates a different taste to the cheese, so it's a delicacy.
Whew, not for me.
But
Never been a big fan of maggots.
Deep fried crickets are good.
Deep fried, maybe. Yeah, could be the mid chocolate.
Deep fried squirrel nuts.
Yeah. So yeah.
There's these chips you can buy that are made out. They're called like crick chips or cricket chips. You can get them on Amazon. I ordered
Cricky
some.
chips.
Yeah, they weren't bad. They weren't bad.
I'll have some deep fried pickles, please.
No.
Cricket chips that make you jump around a lot.
I know. That's
Pickle
exactly
chips.
what I was thinking. There's a joke in there. It's just waiting to happen.
You start rubbing your legs together about half an hour after eating them.
I was making that noise last night, rubbing my legs together in the Colorado cold. Creak, creak, creak.
Yep. This is the problem with eating this stuff.
That's right.
Eating too many crickets again.
It can have certain side effects. We're still testing.
So I guess the audience has got to know this is the kind of stuff that psychics talk about when we think nobody's listening, even though we're clearly on the radio. And so
Cricket chips, they'll keep you up all night.
Absolutely.
He's eating turkey burger with pickles.
Soylent Green.
Turkey pickles.
Yes, right.
Drive you
Next to
hopping mad.
the box of Soylent Green at your nearest supermarket, and so it's. But I think that it'd be good for the audience to know that, even though that the conversation, seem like it's kind of silly or funny, there's a lot of truth inside of these things we're talking about, and when I talk with other psychics, as I have for decades, we talk about the different things that clients we meet and the different problems they have or whatever, without naming names. Everybody has a privacy issue, and so the idea is that, but we come to different ideas of that so many things are happening on our planet. And so it might sound like it's okay, we're being silly or funny or whatever, but there's a seriousness behind all of this. That there a lot of unexplained behavior, a lot of unexplained events that have happened in our history, and so we put these things together. And then inside of, some of the banter back and forth, which is necessary, there's this line of truth, like a silver lining, And I do think that there are lots of weird beings out there on our very own planet, on the Earth. And on the physical level, on the non-physical level, and maybe just on an interdimensional level. And so it's good when people get together and discuss these things, and kind of and then the people listening out there, it rings a bell in their head somewhere deep down, and saying, I saw one of those people one time. Somebody knocked on my door and they just didn't look right, or that happened to me, or I wouldn't mind being a cracker, or whatever they're thinking, and
or when someone's eyes turn black, you run. That's a good message that everyone should.
It is, or don't eat any.
You gotta run.
Cheese. This is really good advice you're getting, people.
Those damn Jeffrey crackers gave me the runs.
And my eyes turn black.
Quality control problem. It started with me. My diet.
Damn. I have to eat less of them so it doesn't have the same effect.
Too much pizza. Too many pizzas. A bachelor.
Prune juice.
Awful.
Rick, I keep hearing Rick trying to say something, but he's so quiet because I think he's trying to get over a cold. But were you trying to say something? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, sort of getting back to the energy vampire type sort of topic as we were sort of on. Given that a lot of paranormal investigators, me and myself, have experienced it, we do at some time experience battery drain in cameras and various pieces of equipment. And you think, well, they've just been 100% charged and now it's shot right down 20% what's going on. And I know sometimes environmental factors and certain temperatures can cause certain things like that, but maybe not to such an extreme. I was just wondering if anybody, Jeff or anybody else, believes that possibly a spirit do actually drain these things to gain energy, and as we are essentially electrical beings ourselves, that they can actually tap into our energy and weaken us, especially if we're unwell or such things as that. What's your thoughts on that?
Spirits don't need anything physical, and so what they would want are things that are non-physical, emotional energies, psychological energies, events that happen could all be considered to be food, Rick. So your point is well made.
Both positive and negative energy as well, as far as emotions. I'm just adding on to your...
Absolutely. No, very true. And but I guess I'm so used to talking about the negative side, because of the work that I do being an exorcist, that for 30 years that I don't get a chance to talk about positive spirits as much as I'd like. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I keep, people always have me on the radio shows to talk about negative stuff, but certainly that there's life after death. What do they do besides sit on clouds? They must do something. So the idea is that there has to be mentally unbalanced spirits, and they could be considered to be vampires insofar as they we know, like, as an example, we know there are people who we're near, and we say they suck our energy, and they say they take our energy. They might be at work or people we know. And it's like, wow, I feel drained every time I go near this person. They're essentially, I think they're taking our energy on a subconscious level. They don't know it. It's not something deliberate most of the time. And so I think that there are spirits that do this deliberately, meaning that they're lacking in emotional energy, or they like to simply mess with other people who are physical. And so I think there's a lot of that going on. Most spirits would have no interest in that and would only be here to help us, give us intuition, good ideas, help us along, visit us, whatever. But there's that percentage of maladjusted spirits and living people that are lacking in all sorts of psychological and emotional energies, and I would consider them to be vampires. At least on an emotional level, on an emotional energy level, certainly.
Well, it's interesting as well because I went to the casino to try to talk to different people about the paranormal, and I came across a native girl. And I was very curious because we do deal with native spirits and such with paranormal investigation here in the Four Corners area. And I asked her, how do you guys deal with a spirit who is not happy because perhaps its bones were dug up or somehow it was disrespected or you're on his land or whatever may be the deal? And talking about the essence, like the essence of people. Some spirits feed off the negative, some spirits feed off the positive. Well, for them, they put out a plate as an offering with fruits and vegetables and toast and honey, so on and so forth, for these spirits. And this girl said she sat there as a little girl and watched out the window, waiting to see the spirit come and consume it. Well, the food stayed there, of course, but she noticed as she went out and took a bite out of the apple, it didn't taste like anything. It had not consumed the actual food, but it consumed the essence. So that could be said for us as well. Like, instead of consuming us wholly, it's consuming our essence, our happiness, or our negativity, so on and so forth. So that's an interesting perspective, I think.
I've had things happen when I've accidentally left out, like, rotted fruit. And I will have these horrid nightmares, or I will feel like there's a negative entity in my house. I have had this happen multiple times. If I see my bananas are going bad, I throw them away, because even on a negative, she's leaving them out as an offering to take the essence. That's a very native thing to do, right? It's the energy. It's an offering of peace and love. And yes, they're feeding off of the energy. But if you leave out something rotten, you see what comes in your house. I'm telling you, I'm talking about not just having something rotten in your fridge or something like that. I'm talking about if you leave out on a platter rotten fruit, without fail, I will have something come into my house that is negative, and I will either have nightmares or sleep paralysis, or something will happen every time. Don't do it. Don't try this at home, kids, please.
Well, yeah, you do have to keep an eye on that, because there is some confusion in that. Is it an offering or is it not? And once you let it just sit there, like you said, and let time and space consume it, let it rot, and you're not keeping up with it, it could be considered an offering by who knows what's in your house. I have things coming through all the time. Yeah.
Very good point.
And they could very much tap into your psychological thoughts about that. So if you're thinking, whoa, if I leave such thing, that's rotten, that's a rotten connotation, that's a smell, that's whatever. And they could play on that. I mean, another person might just think, they've been there a few weeks and chuck them out. I've never have that thought, but people like ourselves and countless others that think in certain ways perhaps invites that sort of entity in as well. Thinking, yeah, we know how they think, so let's perhaps show our presence, and it's perhaps maybe some sort of person's fault because of the way they believe such things. And I'm sure that obviously, if spirit are supposedly our energy after it leaves the physical, then of course, there's good and bad on in the physical, so there should be good and bad out there, and I'm sure that they like to play mind games and prey on certain things that we may or may not believe in.
I didn't believe in it, but I had completely forgotten about it. This is only when I completely forget about it, It's not an actual fear that I've had. I'm just like, I'm super sensitive. I know when things pass through my house and everyone's house all the time. Doesn't mean that they're residents, especially if you're living on like reservation or what was once reservation land, which is a lot of America, and other places,
especially
Canada.
here.
Yes, especially here, especially in Arizona as well. It's the same
It's
thing.
all over the
I know
place.
when something goes through. I think it just speaks to a lower energy type field when you leave something rotted, and it has to be presented. It has to be like presented as some sort of a weird. And I may be the only one that notices it. It might happen to other people, but I'm so sensitive. I know when something's around. I see things all the time. I see orbs 24/7. Like 24/7. Every time I go outside, I see orbs. And so it's just that's I'll wake myself up knowing that something's there, and most people wouldn't notice. Maybe they wake up and they're like, I didn't sleep too well, it's interesting. I don't know. It's always when I forget about it because I never do it consciously, and I'm like, I'll know the second I wake up. I'm like, it's the damn bananas,
It's those cotton picking bananas.
And it's not if it's in your fridge. It's only if it's presented.
It's always there.
Well, it's a big non-physical sign saying that I don't care. That you let something go, and it's kind of telling. Some spirits are going to pick that up and say, you know what, he or she really doesn't have their heart in it. They don't care. They're not watching over their own ritual that they did. And so they might step in, and then you have something in the air, essentially that you kind of feel something, that something's not right,
Well, and like Rick was saying, these different things come in and cause fights and turmoil because that's what it wants to eat upon. And we've experienced it here in our house. Like, my husband said he was in the shower and he just kept picturing himself punching me full-fledged in the head, and he's like, I'm not mad at her. There's no reason I should be thinking this. Like, I don't think this way. What the hell is going on? And so he like kind of shook it off himself or whatnot. But things do come in, and I think especially when you're gifted or you're looking for answers in this field, that they do come in. It's kind of like a beacon. Hey, there's someone here that could see me or that can hear me or somebody I can feed off of. And so we have good ones come in, but we have bad ones too. We have crazy experiences. Just last night, I saw somebody walking down the hall, and I walked into the living room, then in the kitchen, then looked on the front porch to see if one of my visiting family members went out there to smoke. Nobody was out there. So I was like, what the fuck, And then I went into the bedroom where everybody was hanging out, and I was like, that was so weird. I just saw somebody close the door and walk into this living area. And then Michaela, my niece, said, well, that's funny because I just saw you walking into your bedroom, but I know it wasn't you because it walked through the door. And that's the second time this week somebody's seen me that wasn't me. The last time was, I think, last Sunday when I was doing a show. My niece that's living here now said she saw me by the bed and I was moving around kind of like grudge-like, and then I dissipated. And so she won't even tell me about it, but she told her mom about it, who told me. So it's very weird. It makes me think the doppelganger's back and what's going to happen next, but I'm not going to put the energy into that because so far so good, and I'm stronger than that, so not going to do it.
Well, it's not going to bug you. It's not bugging you. All it can do is replicate you, so that's good.
Yeah, I just wish you'd come back and do my dishes.
Yeah.
You could have a clone.
Yeah, it's I just think that what you're saying just rings true. That these things they happen, and it's just such a. I think spirits are attracted to people who can perceive them, because so many people really can't. I think everybody has psychic ability. But I think that people who are really attuned to that river of consciousness, spirits are attracted to, because they do want to communicate for sometimes good reasons and sometimes bad. But many of us have a good dose of, or lower filters, really is a better way to probably say it. And spirits are attracted to those kinds of people and want to communicate with them. And I think that's why some people maybe have more experiences than other people, you know.
Open chakras. It's when you open your chakras, especially when you tune into your higher chakras and then the beyond. You know, when people do it unintentionally all the time, you know, yoga and everything else. But a lot of people, because it is a practice that you actually have to do, and you can do it unintentionally. And there's things in life that can make you open your awareness and your chakras. But the people that are actively have done that and have experienced, it's like you just keep going and keep going, and then you just start understanding more and more and more, right? Once you open it, you know, once you open it, you can't unopen it. Well, you could try.
Well, I think you're right. Exactly. It starts out a little bit like a land of confusion type of thing, and then it kind of, you know, focuses in, you know, if you let it, you know, if you work at it a little bit.
If you seek the answers, a lot of people intentionally close it off. There are a lot of people who have, you know, certain paranormal experiences, and then they, like, you know, my grandparents, for instance, my grandpa, I mean, like he just shut down after that. He won't talk about it. Doesn't want to think about it. He thinks when you die, you're dead. You know, and I just, you know, you can't convince an 80-something-year-old that that's not the way that it is. You know.
Yeah, I very much think that once you open yourself to something, like from an early age, like 8, when I first saw a light anomaly, not a reflected IR light, not a piece of dust reflection, not a droplet of water, which a lot of people will say, oh, it's an orb, look, it's an orb, especially since the advent of digital photography. But I actually saw something self-illuminate in my room, but only sort of within a few inches around itself, almost like the end of a sparkler, and dissipate within a couple of seconds, and then again a different part of the room, and that was it. And being an 8-year-old, I was like, you know, but then things trigger things for you to get interested, and you start reading and researching and very much things. And when I was old enough to join a sitting circle at a spiritualist church, because obviously I was interested in things like that, and things very much ramped up. And when I was 18, I saw my first levitated object, although it happened first and I didn't see it. But a girlfriend at the time and her son saw it, and I played it down as being an electrical discharge from the old CRT TVs that we all used to have, the big boxy things that I put my keys on. I made out it was some sort of electrostatic discharge, and she was okay with that. And I made perhaps now a mistake in doing it, but I'm glad that I did. I said, look, it's all discharged now, and I put my keys back on top of the TV, and because I was playing with a child on a games console back then, and but this time we turned that off, and I went to sit back down on the sofa, sat back down on the sofa watching some UK TV, and within less than a minute, the keys lifted off the top of the TV set about 1.5 foot, all splayed out as if it was in the palm of somebody's hand, floated across the room. These two started freaking out. I was sort of like, came about 4 foot into the room and landed, well, sort of floated down and landed on the mat in front of the fire, and didn't make a chink, didn't make a noise at all. She quickly rushed her son off to the bed and everything, and came back and started having a go at me. Don't tell me that static discharge, it's this, that, the other. What the heck's going on? All the rest of it. And I was like more excited, but obviously she wasn't, so I had to try and, you know, and I was like, right, okay. And she was like, is this anything to do with you going to here, there and everywhere and all the rest of it? And I said, well, yeah, I did get told that, don't be surprised if your pictures move or something moves in a cupboard and you think, I'm sure I put that aside. And, and when I went back to Circle the following week and I said that this happened, and they went, yeah, you're opening up, you're tuning to it. So they want to, like Jeff says, to be in communication in one way or another. And it was about 2 weeks after that I saw one of my first nearly fully formed apparitions, which was just a waist up torso, shimmering, almost like sunlight on a river, and very much a light blue colour. I remember long grey hair. The face I couldn't see; it was just so bright and shimmering. I couldn't make out a face or anything. It was almost like a smudge, like when you catch a pencil and it smears. I could see the hair, and I could see like light blue, and it looked like it was holding something around the chest area. And that definitely shot the heart rate up a little bit. And I merely went through the process that I'd been taught to acknowledge and say, please only appear to me, do these things with me, or I've acknowledged you, and all the rest of it. And asked, there's a young child in the house and other people who wouldn't be happy if you did this for them, and all the rest of it. And I'm sort of teaching grandmothers to suck eggs, and I'd rather not go too fine into it, because obviously, other people, I'll have Jeff and other people for such things as that and their own knowledge, so we won't go over that too much. But, I acknowledged it and everything, and did some prayers and various things, and I was in two minds about mentioning it to the girlfriend, and I waited a little while, although I did do what quite a lot of us investigators and researchers do. I shot out, got a notebook, wrote down every little detail. I could remember the time, what I thought the temperature was, what time of day, details, did a little sketch and all the rest of it. And I sat on it for a couple of weeks. And then she mentioned something about the levitating keys and something her friend had said and whatnot. So I brought it up, and she looked sort of horrified and went really quiet. And I'm like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And she said, "You say you think it was like an old lady, sort of like long grey hair." And I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, and her child was 5 at the time. She was older than myself. And she said, "Well, something's strange, because when we moved here about 2 years ago, my child said, it was that old lady who comes in my room at night." She said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Oh, she just says you're okay, go back to sleep. You don't have to worry about it." And she just played it off as a dream, but perhaps, the child had seen the lady, perhaps a previous occupier of the rented place. So, yeah, it's I very much agree with everyone. As soon as you open yourself up, I mean, I was reading a lot of books about, opening your chakras and visualizing this and that and the other. Mm-hmm. Although I believe I was reading those a bit more after. But I definitely feel if you open yourself up to such possibilities, then, a lot of people can get frightened. But if you're more open to it, then I believe they do want to try and communicate. And the more you see and the more that goes on, you get a toughened skin to it. I'm sure SleepyDave, if he was God knows how old, and he saw somebody's eyes turn black and started speaking the way it did and whatnot, he probably would have run a mile, whereas he was more thick-skinned to it, and he was like, "What? Okay," taking it in. But he opened himself up to it from, obviously, an earlier age, and he was used to stuff like that. But I very much think if you open yourself up, then it can happen, whether it be positive or negative.
Well, and my husband has also said, well, it's because you investigate the paranormal and do these certain things that these things are happening. And my dad would say the same thing about my mom. Well, it's because she was able to talk to and see the dead, and she did these certain things that these things happened to her. Well, you don't have to really be going out and looking for it to happen to you. You could be going to a music festival and something sees you and you look like a nice little appetizer, and it's going to follow you home or wherever the heck, even at the grocery store. Or stopped at a stoplight. Who knows where you could pick something up, but it can come home with you if you're not prepared. If you have that little chink in your armor, maybe you're sick, maybe you're depressed, maybe something else is going on. But on that note, you guys, we do have to go to our second musical break, and this is Tracy Cruz with Electricity for the first song, Joyful Rain for the second, and she is from, let me make sure I'm getting this right, the Bay Area of California. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Your love empowers me. It gives me the energy to move beyond my capabilities. There is no limit to what your love can do.
I feel chemistry whenever you're close to me, and I cannot explain your energy, 'cause you're pulling me like gravity. It feels so strong.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight, we have the Paradox Paranormal Forum. Tonight, we are joined by Rick Kirkby, Jeffrey Seelman, SleepyDave Davenport, and Mia Savage. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Thanks for having us
Thanks
on.
for having us, Tess.
All right, so I know that Jeffrey was saying something as we went into last break about what I had said about you don't have to be looking into the paranormal to have something find you attractive or attached to you. Did you want to add to that, Jeffrey?
Tess, you made a great point, and yes, I'd like to go into that a little bit further. I guess I would consider myself to be a ghostbuster. I started my work not too long after those movies came out. I had not seen them yet. I deliberately did not watch them. I didn't. My first business manager actually wanted me to live in a firehouse and actually get a Ghostbuster mobile. But one of the people that I ran into at first were ghost hunters, and one of the things that I had to face was that I didn't, even though I might have liked them on a personal level, I didn't agree with all of their philosophies about how to deal with spirits, meaning that they seem, and I'm generalizing here and I apologize for that, but the idea of trying to call a spirit is a very dangerous thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, because people all the time saying, please help me to your favorite deity, which is a good thing. But the idea of saying, I need to prove to myself that there's a spirit there, or to not protect oneself against that and, say, look, this just doesn't exist or whatever, is to leave oneself open for attack. And so too many times I have found that people have gone searching for spirits in a variety of ways, whether in graveyards, which, what a great place to go looking for spirits, right? If you're trying to find a positive spirit that you want to speak to, why would they be in a graveyard? No, just taking a walk around dead flesh. But the idea is that they can follow you home, and they do. And this is a warning I've been trying to give out for decades now in my work through the media. It's not the only thing I talk about, but it is something I definitely touch upon, the idea that do not provoke spirits because they have the edge over us. I'm not saying they're all powerful. Most of them are just people who are like us, but they're just dead. We are essentially spirits. But they have the advantage of us not being able to see them for the most part. Not always true, but for the most part. And that gives them a big advantage over us, meaning that we don't know when they're standing next to us. And they're throwing out their anger and their rage, and we're picking that up, and actually we think that's our own anger and rage, when actually there's somebody right next to us that's fuming, essentially, deliberately, in order to change our emotional state of mind.
Or depression.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go to our next panelist, Rick Kirkby. Did you have a topic or question that you would like to discuss?
Yeah, I was interested in to know what you guys thought about paranormal activity relating to poltergeists. I know we all have possibly read the books where it says that a lot of things can occur around teenagers, especially females, when they're coming into menstruating age and whatnot. But surely this can't be all that could cause that, or else we'd have, cases up and down every street that's got a teenager or thereabouts.
Is that a theory?
Female in the household. Apparently that's what they wrote in all the literature, that it was very much surrounded by prepubescent girls or menstruating girls.
That's the only
So,
time I ever had a poltergeist. He had a name and everything. That's the only one that's the only actual poltergeist I've ever had. And it was right about that time in my life. His name was Calvin. He would write his name on my wall. That's how I knew it was his name. He wrote Calvin out on my wall. And he would turn off and on my stereo, knock things. And I always used to joke when my friends came over and something creepy happened, it would be Calvin. But literally, he wasn't attached to the house because he disappeared. And then we had all these other paranormal things. I didn't even know that was a theory. So I learned something. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very much one of the theories. But I'm assuming that can't just be that, given that I've had a friend who's had this growing up, and he's very much male, and he's not got any sisters. So, but I wonder if perhaps Jeff may know if entities like that that like to move things and perhaps write the names on the wall and whatever. Think that children are more influential.
Before I started my work professionally, I was born with psychic ability, and that's why I say I started my work. Before the internet came around, and so I only did in-person work back in the early 1990s, and it was amazing how many parents would call me up and say we're having a problem with the house, and I would go to the home because I would do mostly local type work, and I live in a pretty fair-sized city, and that they would have a teenager. And a lot of these things were happening around the teenager. Sometimes it was the girl, sometimes it was the boy. I don't know if it relates so much to the sex as it does. I thought about this. I mean, I found that there was a pattern. I don't think that this relates to all psychic ability or anything. I think it's just one small corner. But the idea that I think teenagers going through such rapid changes on emotional levels and psychological levels possibly attract spirits.
Yeah,
I think it's the same thing as
psychic. I call it psychic puberty.
Yeah, yeah, and this is not maybe the best example, but it is an example that spirits that are interested in getting drunk. Now, on the other side, there's no physical anything, and there's no alcohol. And it's as the song goes. But one of the places that I find the most amount of spirits gathered together in one place would be bars. Now, I'm not against drinking. I'm not against bars and pubs, anything like that. What I'm saying is, so what would they be doing in there? The idea is that spirits are trying to get drunk vicariously through other people, meaning that if they can sponge emotional energy off of people, negative spirits, and when they were alive, they had an alcohol problem. One way to not deal with that and move on is to hang around people who are drinking when they give off a lot of emotional energy, which we all know when people drink, we give off emotional energy. And so they sponge off of that, and it gives them a perception, a feeling of being drunk. And so I think that what I'm trying to get at here is that spirits are attracted to the kind of people that can either help them or they have some interest in. Most of these things happen for positive reasons. I don't want to scare your listeners out there. This is all negative stuff. But unfortunately, there's also a negative counterpart to that where they are in the process of attacking human beings for various reasons and to get things from them, produce a result. And one of those things might be something physical, also wild energy. And that's why we're talking about, say, teenagers, that are really growing fast, going through a lot of changes at once, are really visible and are easy to pick up by spirits. Once the physical plane Once the physical world is removed, complete, you know that you don't need it, you don't have to deal with it. Your perceptions open up, which we've all been talking about here the last couple hours. They open up, and there are some spirits that take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I've spoken to parapsychologists and the like that I've sort of tried to flip the coin and suggest. I mean, I know May and other people. We can sometimes get names to perhaps attribute the poltergeist activity to, but they've also flipped it sort of on its head and said perhaps around these prepubescent and also entering puberty and hormonal changes, perhaps it's not a spirit or an entity at all. It's perhaps some sort of psychokinetic or telekinetic, which is the same thing, of course, thing that manifests in and around these children and perhaps hasn't got anything to do. They're actually venting this energy out themselves unknowingly, and perhaps it isn't anything always to do with negative entities or such spirit things, and it's actually energy that's given off by them, like you say, in such a transitional phase in their lives.
And that goes along with the question that Shar had in the chat room. Not really a question, but a statement. She said, I thought poltergeist was just energy, not a spirit. And, the German thing for poltergeist is called noisy spirit. A lot of them have been attributed to, like you were saying, pubescent teenagers or preteens. I've also seen cases where an elderly woman going through menopause was causing a poltergeist. I think it all has to do with the energy that you're reflecting off yourself that causes these certain things to happen. In my experience as well, there was a spirit that was really attached to us when we decided to move, was really pissed off because it didn't want us to leave, and started throwing dishes out of the cabinets and shaking the house as if there was an earthquake going on in Boston, Arkansas. That was pretty interesting as far as that went, but for sure there's different stories, different things going on. But is it an energy or is it a spirit?
I think one way to look at it is just strict science. I think there's a big difference between a ghost and a spirit. A ghost, to me, is a reflection of the past, meaning that an example would be if you look at a house and a woman has lived there for 20 years. Every morning she gets up from her bedroom on the second floor. She goes down the stairs into the kitchen. She makes her tea or her coffee. That can actually make an impression upon the atmosphere. Ghost hunters can pick that up with EVP machines, or some psychics can pick this up in certain ways. This can also be very confusing. But it's also something that's not happening in real time. And it's also something that we're dealing with something that is not sentient or alive. It's not conscious, I should say. It's not a soul. We're picking up on an emotional impression on the atmosphere, whereas a spirit would be something that's happening in real time, and it's not a reflection of the past. We're not looking at an impression in the atmosphere. From what
it can be communicated with.
Yeah. And from what you're describing, anything that's throwing something out of this kind of thing is going on, we're talking a spirit. Because unless it's happening all the time, which means that somebody's been throwing dishes around for 30 years, then it's happening in real time. It's not an impression from the past. So you were talking about what is energy and what are spirits. That's one way to tell. The idea is it something that has happened? Emotional energy does not have a consciousness.
That's how I explain ghosts.
It's loose energy. It's loose energy. It's kind of like emotional sweat.
Mm-hmm. That's how I explain between a ghost and a spirit. A ghost is merely a recording that can be triggered. That's the situation, and the spirit is interactive.
Yeah. And you're talking about sweat, and then that brings up to me ectoplasm. What exactly is that? Like, it came from nothing, but yet it's there. And somebody in Periscope is saying ghosts aren't real. Well, I have to strongly disagree due to my experiences, but We'll just agree to disagree.
I think people see trails of spirits. I don't think, people ask me, when you see a spirit, what do you see? I see the whole thing, whether they be human or not human, meaning that they take human form or not human form, or they look like a human or not look like a human. And so, where was I going with this? That, they can look the way they want to look, and that's what they do. And so that's very normal for spirits to do that and to change form at will, and not a difficult thing to do only if you have a physical body.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're probably one of the few people I've ever heard that knows about the impression in the atmosphere, and I absolutely love that terminology. I'm going to use that next time. It's something that my mom and I used to do when we were both going through these huge spiritual things and realizing how things worked. I was really young. I was probably 14. And we would go to the store and, okay, so let me backtrack. So impression of the atmosphere. I have lived in an apartment at one time that I could hear little kids running up and down the stairs, but there was nobody there. And I think it's because the people before us had kids, and then that was confirmed. The other thing, my mom and I used to go to shopping, right? And to test the impression of the atmosphere, we would find the ugliest piece of clothing or the ugliest thing in the store, and we would both just sit there oh, it's so beautiful, putting this positive energy. And then we would go and we would sit back somewhere and watch all of these people flog to that exact item. Even if there's other ones like it behind it, they would go to that exact item, look at this, even if it's the ugliest thing on earth, because we put that energy there. It's like a blueprint or a footprint.
Yeah.
Footprint.
Yeah, and I think that's very scientific. When I first started out in my work, I would use a lot of spiritual terminology. And as I went along, I started to realize, or at least understand in my own way, and this is just my opinion, that everything is really science. Now, I believe in spirits. I think there are spirits out there. I think there are good and bad spirits of varying kinds. There are different creatures. I'm not saying that there aren't all sorts of interesting things out there. But I think that there's a logic to it. And I also think that there's a logic and rules to the other side of reality, meaning the non-physical side of reality, which means anything that's not physical. That there are rules that have to be followed, much like, say, gravity. People can say, well, we can defy gravity, like a jet airplane or something, but we're still dealing with the rules of gravity. This is how I work in my business. This is how I do what I do. And I'm not here to talk about my work, but the idea is that there's a logic and a science to all of this if we track it down. And so when people start thinking about the other side and thinking about spirits and what they can do and what they can't do, one of the things that they don't really think about enough is that there are limitations on what some spirits can do and what some cannot. Why I said some is that there are spirits of varying powers out there, like powerful spirits. Some people might call angelic spirits. Some people have different names for them. But the idea is that they can't do anything that they want. If you take a look around right now, you'll see that cars are not being overturned. People ask me, all the time, what, demonic spirits can do this or that or whatever. I said, well, they can't turn over your car. You're not seeing cars being flipped over down the streets like in, the wonderful Hollywood movies, which I like. I like them.
Yeah, moving a sofa's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's only so much they can do. I'm not saying they can't affect the physical world when the wind is right. And when I say the wind is right, I mean that there's a lot of emotional energy in the atmosphere or in the atmosphere of a home or a business that you're in. That makes the atmosphere thick, like a soup, like you're thickening a soup, and it makes it easier
Like
to
Walmart.
produce. Yeah,
Cornstarch.
yeah, yeah. That's
That's
so
right.
true.
Walmart is cornstarch. I'm gonna call it Corn Mart.
Corn Mart.
It makes it easier to transmit.
Starch Mart.
Starch Mart. It makes it easier to transmit telepathic energy and also different kinds of energy that produces effects upon non-physical, psychological, and emotional systems, as well as some physical systems. So what I'm saying is that the dirtier the atmosphere, and Tessa was talking about this earlier, the dirtier the atmosphere, or was it?
Yeah, it was me.
Water.
Okay, it was you.
That was the water.
That
for
essentially that this also works when it comes to the atmosphere. Where essentially that it creates a thickening of the atmosphere, an impurity, which negative spirits can use to transmit energy from their mind to your mind in the form of emotional energy. So that is how spirits get people to do things that they would not normally do. Like, say, you hurt your significant other. When it's like, why would I do that? Why would I hit my girlfriend or my boyfriend or whatever? I'm not saying this is why this happens. I'm saying it does happen. I call it temporary possession because this very often happens when people abuse alcohol or drugs. I'm not against alcohol or drugs at all. But what I'm saying is that when people abuse it, sometimes they step out, something steps in temporarily, just for a few seconds even.
Yeah,
Agreed.
everything in moderation, including moderation. Nikki in the chat room was asking, what would you consider an evil spirit versus an evil entity? Rick?
Well, I guess I'll go some the terminology. I mean, I'd very much say it's the same thing. I mean, we use spirit. We use spirit. The term spirit entity and entity, I think, are both interchangeable. Evil's evil. Just as evil people, you get evil people. You get either. I mean, some people use those interchangeably, or some people say an entity is like an alien type life form. But to be fair, I guess spiritual life is alien to us in as much as our understanding of it, I suppose. So I just say evil is evil, the same as we have people who are evil and people who aren't. I just use them interchangeably, entity and spirit together. Perhaps Jeff or Mayor or SleepyDave or yourself thinks differently. That's fine, but I believe we use the same words.
It could be, but I think also in another perspective, it could be an actual entity, like what I would consider like an astral. I call it an astral parasite, like something that's not fully formed into something that may have like a soul or an ego or a character of some kind, something that is kind of like a faceless, almost like those the energy that gets left over can actually form. I think that's what astral parasites are made out of. When so much negative thought form, it creates like its own little organism of negativity that becomes like an astral entity. But ultimately, I agree with you. It's all about terminology, and it could be actually the same thing.
I agree too. From my side, I think that's what it is. It's terminology. But I do wonder if the person in the chat room was also trying to maybe get at the idea of the why. One of the things that my clients like to ask me is why things happen, Jeffrey. And I can't answer that because psychologists and psychiatrists make millions of dollars trying to figure this stuff out. Why do people do evil things? We don't know. The closest I've ever come to figuring any of this out is that there's as many reasons for motivations of evil acts, negative acts, as there are people who do them or spirits that do them. It's simply a collection of their personality traits that lead them to want to do good things or bad things, either help people or help spirits or make people or spirits' lives miserable. And so there's really no one particular answer. I wish I knew that. And I was kind of wondering if the person in the chat room was trying to get at that, not just the difference of the terminology, but, the why
Yeah. Well, she
why.
followed up with a question, and she said, have you ever had an evil spirit try to strangle you? So perhaps she asked that first question to follow up with this one.
If I've been attacked many times by demonic spirits. The only ones really I have to worry about. They're much more. A demonic spirit is essentially the counterpart of an angelic spirit. I don't believe that angelic spirits and demonic spirits are created that way. I believe that they were once like we are. They simply are more evolved, whether they're good or whether they're bad. I have been attacked by negative spirits. I do a very good job of defending myself because I do this kind of work every day, and I have for 30 years. When I get attacked successfully, it's always been when my back has been turned, and this would be a good warning for people listening out there, who are dealing with spirits and practitioners and people who are, working in this field and who want to work in this field. It's a very interesting thing to do, and it always happens to me successfully, maybe 7-8 times in my life, whatever. When I've not been working, when I've been out socializing, and I've not been thinking about metaphysical things at all, when I'm not watching my back, when I think everything is clear, the work is over for the day, the family's safe, I'm out, maybe I'm in a pub or something and listening to some rock and roll. I'm a big music collector. And that maybe is when they'll try to strike. We talked about that earlier, the idea of negative spirits following us home, maybe taking an interest in us at one of these stores, restaurants, whatever. And same here, when I'm working, I'm looking for it. When I'm not working, I'm not looking for it, and that is when they might hit. So yeah, the answer is yes. I have been attacked, and I have been attacked successfully. A couple of times it's led me to the hospital. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you that, it's just a little, somebody just pushed me or something. I got hurt.
Occupational hazard for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
Make a lot of enemies when you help, thousands of people over 30 years, and intend to help a couple thousand more before I head the other side if I last that long. So, but yeah, it happens, that I do recommend that people do protect themselves, and how you do it is your own work and your own business. But I think that there's not enough talk out there about people protecting themselves from negative emotional energy that is generated not only by spirits but by people.
Well, it's
sure ferocious.
Important to protect yourself, and people are always asking, how do I protect myself? Well, there's different ways to do it, but the main thing is that you believe in the way you're protecting yourself. You have faith in that, because faith and belief is very hardcore and intent as well. So important when you're trying to protect yourself or cleanse your area, so on and so forth. You have to believe in it. You can't be doing something and not really believe in it, because it's not going to work. You can't just do it willy-nilly and say, well, this is going to work.
Exactly.
When it's not. You have to believe in it.
You're so right. It'll stop it. It'll actually stop it from happening. I mean, the belief, it's so important that you believe in what you're doing, That if,
yourself.
if you don't, yes, exactly. If you don't, it could actually stop the protection process from happening. Because if you don't believe you can take a step, you're not going to take a step. If you don't believe you can drive a car, you're not going to get in the car. I mean, these are wild examples here, but the fact is, belief really does matter. There's belief on a physical level, of physical things, and there's belief of a non-physical nature and belief in yourself and the things that you're doing. There's different kinds of belief. I believe that things like visualization and imagination and belief act very differently on the non-physical level than they do on the physical level. Meaning that, if you want to visualize going from Arizona to Chicago, it's not going to work. You can maybe astral travel, but that's about it. But on a non-physical level, as a spirit, that, if you visualize yourself going from point A to point B, you can do that. But you have to have that dose of belief in there. That's very true, or you're not going anywhere. And that's one of the reasons that some spirits have problems after they die, especially shortly after they die, because they simply don't know what to do. They don't realize that where they think is where they go, and so they end up bouncing around, like a super ball, or not going anywhere at all, or heading for their graveyard, or whatever, what their religion has taught them. What do I do? And I think you can find that if you listen to or study near-death experiences, which is, one way of looking at it. These people really aren't dead, but they're pretty close to it, or maybe, somewhat disconnected from their body, but their stories are all the same. They're all the same, that there's something waiting for them. They feel fine. They seem to remember every little bit of their life. Amazing commonality in their stories. And so I think it's very important that people begin to take a real serious look at protecting themselves from the real enemy that's out there, and that would be people. Now, I'm not saying that people are evil, because most people are nice. What I'm saying is that one of the things that I get as a psychic, and I do a lot of radio shows and TV, is that they always want to hear the demonic stuff, which does happen, but it's also far less common than what we do to each other, how we treat each other as people. This is the real problem here, and I don't get a chance to talk about it as often as I like.
Well,
because we generate emotional energy, and so when we're thinking negative thoughts, you talked about feeling that dress, and then watching people become attracted to it. That's science. You're putting an energy to it, and they're following that path to that energy. And I don't think that that people are they want to look. And I'm generalizing here once again. People are afraid to look at the real problems that are going on in our world, and the biggest one would be that how we treat each other emotionally as human beings is far worse than spirits treat human beings.
Yeah. I was going to add on to, you said you don't know how people become evil. And I was just going to add on to that in a scientific perspective. I have a book about, I love psychology. It's just in my blood, about people who are psychopaths, or they're either sociopathic or psychopaths. And actually, like, their brains are actually physically different than ours, supposedly. Someone who's a psychopath, in a lot of cases, their brains look different from that. Same with someone with ADD, different than somebody. So sometimes, but I think a lot of it is their upbringing. They don't have necessarily, I don't think people are born with the intent to kill. I think, just unlike us, they'll put a gerbil in a microwave and they won't feel bad about it as a kid, because they just don't have that. They're lacking empathy. They lack that part of their brain, or it's underdeveloped. you know. And I think a lot of that, again, with your about people like adding on to your emotions, you can take someone who's sociopathic and he grows up in a horrible situation, then he turns into a serial killer, you know, because of the people around him and how they treated him. They messed him up. Doesn't mean they don't have feelings, just means they don't carry as much empathy when they do harm. Just make sure they don't, and make sure they know it's wrong and they won't do it, whether they feel it or not, you know.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to nature and nurture. Those that are sociopaths, psychopaths, so on and so forth, when they're born, their mother and perhaps their father are distant. They don't have that cuddling, nurturing effect. They don't do the breastfeeding, so on and so forth. They keep the child as far away from them as possible, feed them with a bottle, don't give them that love and nurturing that they need as a human being. Those that are loved and nurtured turn out differently, so it causes that chemistry early on in the brain when the child is left to cry and cry and cry, and there's different experiments going on with that as well. Do you get the child and pick it up and nurture it when it's crying, or do you ignore it for hours on end and just let it learn to be quiet and learn to know itself or whatever they're thinking? I'm not sure.
Numb itself.
Yeah, it does seem to cause issues where they don't know how to work through those feelings or emotions or lack of. Like you were saying, they don't even know how to care or feel, so on and so forth. So when they kill something and take its life, and then they build up to something bigger, like another human being, they're trying to get a reaction or trying to get a feeling from themselves, but it doesn't work, and then it becomes like a hobby. I don't know. It's very interesting and very disturbing at the same time.
I think that's all true. I also think that inside of that very terrible cake batter, that once in a while you also have to take into account past lives. That not all of this is necessarily things that are happening in this life, or even, you know, maybe physical brain issues. I think that's right. I mean, that's true. And you take a look at somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, who unfortunately came from my city. You know, back in the 1990s, and before I moved to Las Vegas for the second time, I couldn't get a date, hardly. I mean, my name is Jeffrey, too, but I go by Jeff once in a while. And I'll tell you something. When that happened in Milwaukee, I would say, hello, what's your name? Jeffrey? You're not Jeffrey Dahmer. You know that I still get that? Did I still get that sometimes?
Wow.
Now, what I'm saying is this. The reason I'm saying that is that this man has no history. There's nothing in this family's history. His family is, besides the divorce thing, there's nobody heard him. So, and I'm not trying to argue here. What I'm trying to get at is that I think that there is also, along what you said is very true, but I also think that with some of these psychopaths, that they're in some of the cases that there are past life issues also that have not been dealt with, and some of this might be straight homicide, sadistic behavior, because we live in a very violent world, and people remind us of how violent it is. But if you really study history, you'll see very clearly that we are living in a time that has never been less violent on this planet.
Very true.
This is the least violent this planet has ever been. Even though if you just watch the news or something, you get a different impression. But
well, it seems like more, I think, because information is so much more prevalent to us.
Yeah.
You know, it's right there, and everybody knows about it when it happens.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and so I just think that, I just wanted to say that because I do think that some of these people have done things in other lifetimes that they have not dealt with, and they don't get along with they don't get along with other people, and they don't play well with other people, and maybe haven't for a long time. And I think this is only a percentage of people, a very small percentage. But I think
a lot of them are CEOs, believe it or not. Actual
sure.
They call it the psychopath or the sociopathic scale. They did an experiment where they gave a whole bunch of CEOs of banks and things like that the psychopathic test, And I think it was like some astronomical number of them, like 30%, as opposed to the 1 or 2% in our population. And because they don't have empathy, they will, do whatever it is that they need to do to succeed, including, throwing others under the bus if they're competitive,
Right.
getting them fired.
And I think that's where, okay, so was it something that happened when you were a baby or something you learned climbing up the corporate ladder? Because you do learn to cut heads and do whatever it takes, like you said, to get to where you need to be financially, to making that the big bucks. So it doesn't really matter whose head you're chopping as long as you're still on top.
In their minds, yeah.
I think it's interesting how they, I remember growing up in the 1960s, as a young lad, and the teachers kind of telling us, that you need to beat your friend next to you in this test. They started to move away from cooperation into competition. Your best friend sitting next to you in your class is not your friend, but is your competition. And I was trained like that when I was young, and we all were. I mean, when I was growing up, the place I grew up, anyways, the idea that we're being trained to not trust each other, we're being trained to not like each other. We're being trained to outperform each other. We're being trained.
Interesting.
Indeed.
And I think that goes into the CEO thing, because somebody's doing the training. So
exactly.
Not me. So, I mean, I think that's kind of why I said that, that it's true. That some of these people who are running these corporations and stuff are nuts. They're crazy.
Yeah,
They're
one of the big ones.
They're necking foots.
Tested almost like Bundy did. But I'm not even kidding you. One of the large, I think he owns a bank. He tested almost as high as Ted Bundy, and Ted Bundy tested the highest, I think, out of all of the serial killers on this. They call it the psychopathic scale. Very fascinating.
I forgot the name of the. Don't we have a person from Canada here tonight?
Not tonight.
Okay. I forgot the name. Canada's most famous female serial killer, Carla. I forgot her last name now. They let her out. They had to. There was a legal problem which they fixed. She only got 12 years. She should have got life. But she's Canada's most notorious serial killer. She came from a completely normal family. There was just nothing there. And
Carla Homolka.
Yes, and when
I remember her story.
After she was arrested and put in prison while she was doing her 12 years, because they already decided she was going to do that before they found the videotapes that the lawyer was hiding, which they changed the Canadian law after that. But that's another story. But they hired 12 of the best psychiatrists in Canada to take a look at her and try to figure out what makes her tick. Is just because she was abused by her husband, who actually did most of the killing and some of the torturing, and he did have a weird life and he was abused and all the rest of it. But she was
offered up her sister, though. I remember that.
She did twice, and the second time they killed her. And and so what I'm getting at is that 6. So we're talking 12 of the best psychiatrists in Canada. 6 of them said she was telling the truth. 6 of them said you couldn't believe one word she said. She's a pathological liar. That she would know the truth. That she simply, was so good at lying. And it was so natural to her that they're
the best liars.
Yeah, that she's dangerous. And then half of them said, you know what, she's a victim. As a matter of fact, that because of what happened to her murderous boyfriend tried to kill her before they got busted. That actually was when they changed the law. When a woman gets abused by a boyfriend or a husband and then kills them, that she can get off, which is a positive thing. But she's that actually came out of that case, which was kind of weird. And
I remember she's still free to this day. I think she changed her name or something.
Yeah,
Well,
but
yeah,
she was
nobody
actually
really
helping find his prey and everything, and she was into it until they got busted, and then she's like, "Oh no, I'm a total victim," when she was actually enjoying all of it, basically.
not only enjoying it, it's not that it was her idea. When the lawyer, it turns out the lawyer was hiding the videotapes that they made, and some of the stuff was just plain her idea. Among the videotapes, they found, and I don't mean to get into a bad discussion here, but of the 30 rapes that he committed, that they could prove that he committed, besides the murders and tortures, somebody had videotaped them, and it turned out to be her.
Well, yeah, and a lot of them he was doing on his own until they started collaborating.
Exactly.
And she was, I think, wanting him to just be there and doing it with her instead of going out and doing it on his own. But she got with him at a very young age, and I think that's part of what formed her as well. But I hate to interrupt because we're in such a good discussion, but we're down to our last 3 minutes. Mr. Rick Kirkby, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here, yeah.
Okay.
She was released in 2005 after serving 12 years because she got a plea deal claiming that she was abused by a previous husband who was, she blamed for her helping him commit 3 murders. So she got manslaughter charges and only served 12 years and was released in 2005.
Well, she even lied about her sister, like the scrapes on her faces and stuff like that, where it was her trying to do CPR, which was not the case. It was just them moving her around and all the things that were happening due to the drugs they gave her. But, Rick, how can our listeners find you and get in touch with you if they see fit to find more information from you?
On Facebook, Rick Kirkby, and also on Twitter at Kirkby007. That's Kirkby and the numbers 007, like James Bond.
Very fitting.
Oh.
Jeffrey,
Sir James?
how about you?
Starclear.com. Starclear.com. Starclear. Just as it sounds. One word together, starclear.com. You'll find my website, everything you always wanted to know about me, all my contact information. Get a hold of me. I love to answer questions.
Sleepy Dave.
I think
Mia. Mia, how can our listeners find you?
If you like techno and you think you're a starseed, you can find me on SoundCloud at Antidote for Savages, or you can find me on Facebook if you'd like, and my name is spelled MEA Savage.
And you can find our very own Sleepy Dave Davenport on Mondays and Fridays on We Are Paradox Media, Coffee with Sleepy Dave. But I just want to say thank you so much to the Forum for joining me tonight on Late Night in the Rockies. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks for having me on. Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Hope to do it again.
Okay.
Me too. And thank you to all of our listeners on We Are Paradox Media, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Periscope, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night with special guest Amy Collins. We're going to be talking about past lives, the paranormal skinwalkers, so on and so forth. So make sure you tune in to We Are Paradox Media. Don't forget, you guys, we are all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light.